What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with the final installment of our running back ranking series. If you guys missed the first two videos, we did running backs 1 through 10. Then we did running backs 11 through 20. Now we're going to be talking about the guys, the unsung heroes, the RB 21 through 30. These are the guys that we're not exactly the highest on. We're not the guys that we want anchoring our team. But if you guys do enjoy this video, there's going to definitely be some valuable information to come from it. If you do enjoy this video, if you receive any value at any point in time, go down to the bottom of this video and hit the like button. It helps us out tremendously. Comment any of your thoughts down below, maybe who your favorite running back is in this range of the rankings. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Danny, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, we talked about our top 20 running backs. Guys are going to populate your first 3 rounds of your fantasy drafts. But if you don't end up with a couple of those guys, a few of those guys, how can you attack the running back position? How would you kind of weigh out those remainder of those top options? And that's what we're here to do today. We're going to talk about the RBs 21 to 30 and give you guys the rundown of their strengths, their weaknesses, and if we want to target them or not in our fantasy football drafts at their current average draft position. So I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go. Let's hit that damn intro and get into this video. All right, so before we get into the actual rankings, when we go through 21 to 30, let's actually talk about the viability of the strategy of loading up on guys in this range. And historically, statistically, this is not a range of running backs that you want to rely upon in your fantasy drafts. You guys should see on the screen, but this would be what's considered the RB dead zone. And Jack Miller of Establish the Run has really made a good claim as to what exactly the RB dead zone is, and statistically speaking, how it can affect your fantasy football success rate. So he talks about it. You guys can see the link in the description. I'll put the article there. And he basically outlines how good we are as fantasy football players in predicting how running backs, how wide receivers, how quarterbacks, how tight ends are going to be able to perform on a year-to-year basis. And you guys can see after those first 2 rounds, those top elite running backs that we know about, the fantasy community is not able to depict those next breakout type of backs. And you guys can see in terms of the correlation, 0.08 at the running back position versus 0.21, which basically means we are really good at seeing what wide receivers are ready to step up, what wide receivers are able to become those league winners, not so much at the running back position. So if that's the case, and I'm weighing these options in the mid rounds, I'm looking at a wide receiver like a Jerry Jeudy or a running back, as we'll get into, like a Mike Davis. I'm taking the breakout wide receiver every single time because I am looking for that ultimate upside. And a guy like Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion, has that on the table for him. So what are your thoughts on this dead zone area?
And I think this is when you get into the scary area of draft strategy, right? Because we talked and we did a mock draft yesterday and it's doing really well. So we appreciate the support on that. But we both adopted a low, not a robust RB strategy, right? You went hero RB. You took Christian McCaffrey first overall and didn't take a running back for a while after that. I took Davante Adams and Calvin Ridley in the first 2 rounds. So I didn't have an anchor running back to begin with. So I took J.K. Dobbins in the 3rd round. And then after that, I avoided this RB dead zone, right? I had avoided the guys that we're going to talk about today for a reason, because I think it does correlate very well. Those wide receivers you're getting in this range, you're getting the Chase Claypools, all those guys last year was the A.J. Browns, DK Metcalfs, Calvin Ridleys. You're just way better off taking these guys. So basically, to sum up the whole thing, if you don't get 2 running backs early in the draft, 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, you're better off going with wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks in those mid rounds. And then coming back, as you guys can see on the screen, rounds 7 to 10 have usually been a better area to take your RB2, your RB3, if you go with a bit of a wide receiver, tight end, quarterback strategy early in the draft. And you guys can see last year, we just happened to not see any good running backs in this round 7 to 10 range. And I think that's going to change this year because guys like Ronald Jones, guys like Damien Harris, guys like Leonard Fournette and James Conner and some of these other guys that are going in this range, I actually kind of like Zach Moss. Yeah, I kind of like the outlook of some of these guys. It's not necessarily the guys that we were looking at last year. Last year was like the Sony Michels and Tariq Cohens and just some terrible running backs, as you guys can see on the screen there. So overall, when you look, the easiest way to think about this graph right here, PPR scoring ADP for running backs and wide receivers, you guys can see it's relatively similar, picks 1 through 50 in ADP. But once you get to pick 50, which is about the 4th round, 5th round range, the wide receivers take a significant uptick in average score ADP as compared to the running backs, because running back is a scarce position in the NFL. We know this. There's not 32 workhorse running backs across the NFL. We know there's only about 15 to 20 really good options, and that's why you're better off taking these wide receivers once you get past them.
Yeah, and being able to interpret this information, you guys can see even like a pick 25 is when it starts widening out at the wide receiver range and starts significantly dipping at the running back range. But you can see once you hit that pick 100, once you enter that 8th, 9th, 10th round area, the gap just significantly closes. So if you're interpreting this information at all, basically what you have to take away is the wide receivers in those mid rounds are far outproducing the running backs in that area. But once you start tailing off into the late single digit rounds, early double digit rounds, that's when the production kind of closes out. So why would you take a running back in those positions when the wide receiver talent is plentiful? And in general, if you think of it like this, a lot of people like shoring up their running back, shoring up their wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and then worrying about their flexes as if it's the least valuable position in their starting lineup, just because you could put anybody in that position. If you adopt that theory that if I make this RB2 position my weakest position and load up my flexes, you'll still kind of have that exact same production, except you'll be getting better players in your flexes and having to worry about the RB2 production, aka the most replaceable production in fantasy football, last. So I'm an advocate of taking those wide receivers, loading up, and having to worry about my RB2 later on if I do not escape my first 2 rounds with running backs. So anyways, it's a lot of strategy involved. We're going to be talking about that a lot later in this offseason, talking about early round strategies. But let's get into the video. And we can start off with the consensus rankings on our list. And you guys can see from 21 to 30, mine on the left, Corey's on the right, consensus on the far right. So let's start it off. You guys see first name on the consensus, Mike Davis of the Atlanta Falcons. Take it away with why he may be appealing in this area.
Mike Davis is actually my RB 18, so he doesn't even really fit into this RB dead zone area. I have him ranked ahead of Josh Jacobs and some of these other guys that are probably going to go way ahead of him in actual drafts. Mike Davis is currently going off the board as the RB 23, 62nd overall pick on Underdog Fantasy, the RB 23, 60th overall pick in multi-site ADP. So this is a guy that you're routinely getting at the back of the 5th round or so. We know that Davis has projected volume on his side, right? That is the big appeal of Mike Davis. He's really the only viable running back that the Falcons have. Behind him, it's, Quadre Olison and a bunch of other scrubs that don't really belong even in the NFL at this point in their careers. Other thing that I think is underrated about Mike Davis is the fact that he got volume last year too with the Carolina Panthers when Christian McCaffrey was out, and he was actually good with that volume. You guys can see on the screen, number 3 in the NFL in juke rate last year, number 2 in tackles avoided per attempt according to PFF. So this was a guy that was breaking tackles. He was avoiding tackles. He was good after contact as well, over 3 yards after contact per attempt. A guy who was also contributing in the passing game. He had a top 4 target share at the running back position and a top 15 yards per route run at the running back position. So if this guy gets volume, and I think this volume might even be better than he was getting last year, because last year you had to deal with the fact that Christian McCaffrey was a little in and out of the lineup, and Carolina just overall wasn't a very good team. I think the Falcons' offense is a little bit better than the Panthers was last year, and you only have to compete for targets in the passing game with Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. There's a lot more pass catching competition in the backfield for Mike Davis last year. And you guys can see on the screen, in the games that Christian McCaffrey did not play a snap, right? He was completely out of the lineup because he missed. Mike Davis was not the starting running back week 1 and 2. And then Christian McCaffrey came back in week 9. So 15.37 PPR points per game was what you were getting out of Mike Davis, which was good for a top 10 running back in PPR points per game. The only thing that he doesn't bring to the table of the major 4 things that you want, bulk of the carries, targets, and goal line work, right? Red zone work, scoring opportunities. The only thing he doesn't bring to the table is big play upside. He only had 5 breakaway runs last year, which is going to keep him down here below guys like Swift and Dobbins, who have a little bit more talent, a little bit more big play upside. But overall, though, Mike Davis is in a good scheme with Arthur Smith coming in, a decent offense. I think this offense should be about a top 20 scoring unit, top 15 scoring unit in the league. He has the bulk of the volume in this offense, and he can give you a lot in the passing game. So to me, of these dead zone running backs, and we already talked about the theory beforehand, he's the one I'm going to take the shot on if I end up taking a shot on any of them.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I have another name on this list that I would take a shot on. But when you're talking about Mike Davis and you're trying to convince yourself if I'm going to take my fantasy drafts, you're going to take him based off the talent that you believe he has. You're not just going to take him because, quote unquote, he's supposed to have this workload. This is why I want him. Because every year when we go into seasons trying to project workloads, we are terrible at it. But if we genuinely believe, again, Mike Davis is a good enough player to garner that workload, by all means, if you believe in him, I understand that for sure.
The early 6th round is probably the highest I would take him.
Yeah.
It's all going to depend what quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends are on the board. Of course, I'm not going to take him over any of the top 5 quarterbacks. I'm not going to take him over some of these top end wide receivers like Claypool and AIYUK and T. Higgins and such like that. If those guys are off the board and I'm staring down the barrel of Courtland Sutton versus Mike Davis, I'll take Mike Davis.
Yeah, no, for sure. I fully agree. That's a good emphasis to make here, because Mike Davis, we're not just taking him for the volume. We're taking him because we think he's a good player. But anyways, let's get into the next player on this list. Your RB20, my RB23. Let's take it away with Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and Jacobs is another guy that I'm almost willing to take the shot on, but the one thing that scares me off of Josh Jacobs is what his ADP is probably going to be in your home leagues, and you guys can see the discrepancy. RB22, 58 overall on Underdog. That's about right? I would definitely take him in that kind of range of the draft, but RB25, 45 overall on multi-site. So this is a guy that you got to spend a 4th round pick and maybe even a 3rd round pick in some more casual home leagues. Josh Jacobs, the appeal is very simple. He is going to get a lot of work on the ground. The Las Vegas Raiders ran the ball 457 times last year and had 112 running back targets. So that's 569 opportunities in this backfield. And even if we give Kenyon Drake a good share of that, I think he'll command about 200 opportunities. That should be a lot left for Josh Jacobs to have 300 and 325 opportunities on the season. His opportunity share in 2020 was 67%, 64% in his rookie year. If his share is 55% this year, which I think is unlikely, it'll probably be in that 60% range. 320 opportunities, exactly what he's slotted to receive. But the thing with Josh Jacobs that makes you not want to draft him, obviously, is the cons, right? What if Kenyon Drake plays a bigger role? They paid him 2 years, $16 million. That is a lot of money for a running back to be commanding in free agency. And we have the fact that this offensive line isn't very good. They lost a number of pieces. Rodney Hudson, they traded away Trent Brown. They lost Gabe Jackson in a trade to the Seahawks. So this offensive line's got a lot of moving parts. It's not going to be a very good unit. The one thing that I do hold in favor of Josh Jacobs, though, is the fact that this defense was so bad last year and they allowed so many plays against, meaning the offense was running so many plays against them because they couldn't get off the field, that there's a chance they even commit to the run even more so this year than they did last year. So there's some factors in favor for Josh Jacobs, but overall, a lot of question marks for a guy that you're probably going to have to spend a 4th round home league pick on. And at that point, give me Amari Cooper, give me Cooper Kupp, give me Chris Godwin, whatever wide receiver is going in that range.
Somehow falls.
Give me freaking Kyle Pitts over him. Like, there's a lot of guys that are going to go around him that are going to make me not want to draft Josh Jacobs this year.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. And the way I view Josh Jacobs is this as if he's a less talented Nick Chubb in a much worse situation on a much worse offense. That's the way I look at it. Honestly, what is the upside with taking him in the 4th round? Genuinely speaking, you have all those elite wide receivers. You have those elite tight ends, even up to the point where if any of the quarterbacks are on the board, I'm easily taking them over a guy like Josh Jacobs. I think it's a floor play. I think it's, oh, well, this guy's going to get locked into 230 carries. That's why I want him. If you are drafting for floor in your mid rounds, you're not drafting to win your leagues. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it right there. 45 overall multi-site, RB25. That just goes to show the RB22 is going off the board, 58th overall on Underdog. The RB25 is coming off the board, 45th overall multi-site. You see Underdog, the sharpest drafters have addressed the position, have realized, why would I be taking these running backs over wide receivers? And as a result, a 13 spot discrepancy despite being ranked 3 running backs lower. Home leagues love their running backs. Take that in mind. So if you're in your home leagues, load up on these elite upside wide receivers.
Yeah, totally agree. So we can get into another guy that you said you're a little bit more optimistic on. This is actually my guy pre-draft, so it's a little weird that you're more optimistic on him post-draft. But Travis Etienne, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, why is he one of the guys that you're willing to take in this RB dead zone?
Yep, so he's currently coming off the board, RB21 54 overall on Underdog, RB21 53 overall on multi-site. And the reason why he's so high for me, listen, 21 is again, he might finish this overall in the season, but that's not why I'm drafting him. I am drafting him because if I am taking a dead zone running back, I am shooting for ultimate upside. And I think James Robinson is a fine running back. But what this situation reminds me of is what DeAndre Swift came into with the Detroit Lions last year. Bring him along slowly, let him get the receiving role, let him get the targets. And if Etienne is able to not only get a receiving role later on, but possibly into a role of 18 opportunities per game, 20 opportunities per game, optimistically later on in the season, this guy could, down the stretch, week 8, week 9 on, similar to what I mentioned with another guy on this list, could legit offer you RB1 upside down the stretch and could be a guy that we're talking about going into 2022 as one of those late uprisers in the season, similar to what we saw from Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Swift in 2020. If I'm taking a running back in the 5th round and I'm on modified 0 RB and I'm ready to take that upside RB2 and get my floor plays later on rounds 8, 9, 10, so on and so forth, give me the upside of Etienne. And I think he's pretty much priced appropriately. 5th round is about the range you take him. But in home leagues, maybe people are scared of James Robinson. Maybe you're able to get him in the 6th round. He is the one guy that I'm wanting to shoot for upside with in this range of the quote unquote RB dead zone. And the one outlier of the overall statistic of the RB dead zone is these upside rookies that down the stretch will give you that upside in your leagues. Jonathan Taylor last year, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, all these guys started off slow. They might have been a hindrance to have on the back end of your roster in the early portion of the season. But if you're able to hold on, if you're able to build enough depth through your wide receivers, through your fodder running backs later on, Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissick of the world, they were able to win you leagues down the stretch. And that is why I'm willing to take Travis Etienne and trust my drafting ability to be able to get the floor plays to supplement my lineup.
Again, there's no arguments with the rationale of taking a guy like Travis Etienne. I personally just can't bench a guy for 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks that I'm drafting in the 5th round when I could get a T. Higgins, a Jerry Jeudy, whatever kind of wide receiver I could get in that range. So to me, he needs to be a mid-6th round pick for me to actually select him, because I do think, while we're not the biggest believers in James Robinson, I do think James Robinson is good enough to hold him off for a couple weeks for sure.
Yeah, and again, it's fully relative on what wide receivers you're passing on. I'm not passing on the T. Higgins, the Jerry Jeudy's of the world. Once I get into like the Kenny Galladay's, the Cortland Suttons, then I'm willing to shoot for upside with Travis Etienne. So it fully depends what your board's looking at, what wide receivers are available. But either way, if I'm going to take a running back in this range, this would be the archetype I'm looking for. And that's similar to really the next 2 running backs on this list. And guess what? What they all have in common? They're rookie running backs. I'm going to talk about Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. And we saw it preseason week 1 was an absolute load, was an absolute tank. And if he's able to garner an early season role, we're talking about a role left from Phillip Lindsay last year, 13 opportunities per game. I think that's going to be closer to a 16, 17, 18 opportunities per game, because let's be honest here, Javonte Williams as the talent is a much better player than even what Phillip Lindsay was for the Denver Broncos. And this is a team that all offseason, going into the draft, everything we have heard to this point has pointed to the fact that they are in love with Javonte Williams. They traded up in front of the Miami Dolphins to make sure that this guy was their next Nick Chubb on their team. And similar to what Nick Chubb did as a rookie, week 8 on was a legitimate RB1. Talk about the situation. Phillip Lindsay vacates 7 opportunities in the red zone. So whatever. I do think he's going to eat into Melvin Gordon's 29, in my opinion, because we did see over the stretch that this is a guy that is a full-fledged bell cow archetype that can contribute in all facets of the game, inside zone, outside zone. I mean, this is the best elusive charted running back in PFF history. 215.4 PFF elusiveness rating and avoided a tackle on 46.96% of his attempts last year. This is a baller. This is a guy that knows how to shed tackles, knows how to break tackles, knows how to break off these big plays too. 17.2% of his runs went for 15-plus yards. Again, if I am shooting for upside, this is the archetype. And the stretch that we're looking for with this guy, if he's going to become the next David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor of last year, where he's quote unquote beating up on bad defenses, you guys can see the schedule on the screen. I mean, week 12 on, when he's supposedly going to be in position to win you championships, there are no hard defenses. And while we don't like projecting forward like this, I mean, I can confidently say the Detroit Lions will not be able to stop the run. The Oakland Raiders absolutely will not be able to stop the run. Cincinnati Bengals as well. So if I'm looking at this situation where I can take this guy as an upside bench piece, maybe he's even viable in the early portion of the season. Maybe he's getting 15 opportunities. He's contributing you 10, 11, 12 points, but then he takes that upturn after that bye week. I'm taking the shot there. And if he's there in the 6th round where he's currently going, this is the exception of the rule for the dead zone. You want guys that down the stretch, point per game basis, are able to deliver on their promise.
Again, I have no problems with what you said, anything you said there, but my issue is drafting these guys, not having them in fantasy next year. My issue is drafting them. I would rather let somebody else spend draft picks on Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. And when they're pissed off in week 4, when Javonte Williams has 14 carries as his highest in those 4 weeks, then I'm going to trade for Javonte Williams. Then I'm going to trade for Travis Etienne. Then I'm going to trade for Michael Carter, Trey Sermon, whatever rookie running back we're talking about right now. I'm going to trade for them then, because I think that's what's going to be the case with a lot of these guys. And I want to win games early in my season. And yes, I trust my drafting ability to be able to fill out the rest of my roster to help me do that. But at the same time, it is tough when you're spending a top 5, top 6 round pick on a guy that you're presumably not going to be able to use early in the season. And sure, maybe one of these guys is like a full-fledged like bell cow by the beginning of the season. But to me, it screams buy these guys in week 5 rather than draft them. So that's the approach I'm going to take to these rookie running backs, because I would rather get sure thing wide receivers. And then my late round wide receivers, maybe Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, some of these guys, maybe they're popping off, and the recency bias part of people's brains when they drafted Javonte Williams in the 6th round, he's doing nothing. I could trade a rookie receiver for Javonte Williams in week 5.
And I understand that. Again, the way I kind of view it, like, again, if you want to buy them low, I understand as well. I assume that if someone's drafting them, they kind of already know going in. But hey, if they don't know going in that they're probably going to be slower out of the gate, by all means, they are a good buy low in fantasy football. But for these next few guys, again, we can kind of just speed up this video. We're going on a little long right now because we talked about the strategy. Michael Carter, you guys have heard me talk about him all offseason. Currently going off the board. RB 30, 84th overall in Underdog. RB 30, 82nd overall in multi-site. And this is a guy that basically is escaping the dead zone. This is a guy that's going in the round 8, mid to late round 8 area. And why? In any type of PPR, half PPR, full PPR format, this guy is going to get the receiving role of this team. And it's been talked about nonstop throughout camp. I talked about him in my top 5 rookies, but he's got the talent. Mentioned a looseness rating, 4th in the class, 135.1. Talk about the opportunity. Frank Gore vacates 26 attempts inside the red zone. And if we're talking about the situation, offensive line has improved by spades this offseason. Elijah Vera Tucker added to this unit, 14th overall pick. Morgan Moses, right tackle, one of the better graded right tackles in all of football last year, according to PFF. This is, in my opinion, a top 15 to 20 offensive line in the league. I know you're going to talk about it a lot in the offensive line video that will be coming out soon. And in general, Connor Hughes has reported all offseason they can't see long before he enters that first-team offense. Well, guess what? He's already entered it. He's already played first-team snaps. He got the first-team looks specifically in that first preseason game as well. I'm excited. I'm ready to draft this guy. And if he's an 8th-round pick, if I can get him as my modified 0RB, quote-unquote RB2, that's value to me.
Yeah, I agree on Carter. It was a little concerning to see that with Tevin Coleman out, Ty Johnson was as involved as he was in that first preseason game. So that gives me a little bit of pause on Carter. Hopefully that knocks his ADP down to that 8th round range. But like I talked about in that Jack Miller tweet, that round 7 through 10, if you're going to execute one of those hero RB strategies where you get an anchor running back, if you can swing back down after you filled out your wide receiver core, maybe you got an elite tight end, maybe you got an elite quarterback, and you come back down, you grab a Michael Carter, James Conner, Zach Moss, round 7, 8, 9, then you're really filling out your running back core and executing that strategy to a good degree. So yeah, I definitely agree. Michael Carter is one of these guys that just misses this RB dead zone. Is a guy, once I get to the 7th, 8th round, when the wide receiver position begins to dry up and we're looking at Deebo Samuels, Will Fullers, and some of the wide receivers like that, that's when I'm willing to pull the trigger on a guy like Michael Carter. So another guy that kind of fits into that same range of ADP is Damien Harris, RB 29, 82nd overall. RB 34, 94th overall on multi-site. So he is going a little bit later in home leagues, probably because of the stigma of the Patriots backfield. And unfortunately for Damien Harris, on Thursday, which was the most recent preseason game of the Patriots, we did see that stigma rear its ugly head, where Damien Harris got 8 snaps with the first team, James White got 5 snaps, and Sony Michel got 4. And in the first preseason game, Damien Harris basically dominated all the first and second down snaps, and James White came in on third down. So this is a situation, I've talked about Damien Harris enough, so I'm probably not going to talk about him too much, but I expect this guy to be the primary ball carrier for this team. The question really is how much involvement do Sony Michel and Ramondre Stevenson, some of these other tertiary running backs in the backfield see? I have the feeling that this is a guy that's going to be into back-end RB2 production from the very beginning of the season. He's a guy that if you take a Travis Etienne or Javonte Williams is a great guy to pair with them, because you should be able to get guaranteed production out of them in your RB2 slot or whatever until those guys are ready to take over their backfield. So he's a guy that I'm willing to take in the 7th, 8th round, but that's about, the apex of his value, in my opinion, because I don't think this is a guy with top 12, top 15 upside, even because he pretty much needs a touchdown, because he's only going to get, 13 to 18 carries a game, maybe a target or two here and there. And he needs to get in the end zone to return RB2 value on a weekly basis.
Yeah, from a workload standpoint, he's probably safe in terms of like being the leader in terms of the ground game. But as you mentioned, having a guy
One
like
of the
James
best
White,
lines in the league, by the way,
yeah,
too. So they should be able to open up holes for him. And he is a great runner of the ball. Every time he touches the ball, you can see how good of a runner he is.
yeah, I mean, I think his ceiling, honestly, at the highest end, I don't even think he gets here because, again, the reception total is probably not even going to be here. But similar to what we've seen from Josh Jacobs in the past, I'm not going to put Nick Chubb status, obviously, but Josh Jacobs, maybe his ceiling's RB10, RB12 area. That's probably where I see it with Harris. But that's
14 to 16 is about what I'm expecting as like
yeah,
a median range of outcomes
yeah,
from him.
yeah. Like in order for him to get in that fringe 10 to 12 area, he would probably need to score touchdowns. Like that's genuinely how it would be. However, though, again, this is just around the end of the dead zone to early past the dead zone. And I'm willing to take him here. 94th overall, multi-site ADP, 34th running back. Like, I'm fine with him there. Again, if I start a Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara in my drafts, and I'm able to get him late after stocking up on wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback talent at the top, and he's my RB2, I'm confident leaving that draft.
Yep. Yeah. No disagreements there. So let's move on to RB27 in consensus, another rookie running back in Trey Sermon.
Yeah, absolutely. RB26, 71st overall pick on Underdog. RB31, 87th overall pick on multi-site. And we have seen in that first preseason game, this was the first team running back for the San Francisco 49ers. He got 10 of the 12 first team starting snaps. And as a rookie running back in a Kyle Shanahan system, and a Kyle Shanahan quote-unquote team, to be able to garner that type of role right away is very encouraging because we have seen in the past that Shanahan likes to rotate his backs. If Sermon's already week one preseason able to garner that role, and I get it, Raheem Mostert didn't play, but he was still competing with Wayne Gallman, and Wayne Gallman has shown to be serviceable back in this league. That points to me that Trey Sermon is fully in this team's plans. So we expect this to be one of the more run-heavy teams in the league and one of the more run-heavy teams in the red zone. If that's the case, Trey Sermon has the archetype to be this team's new Jeff Wilson type of back. We've seen Jeff Wilson over the past be a very efficient goal line runner. Expect that in the red zone, except Trey Sermon to also have more of a role between the 20s. And if that's the case, we have already heard him talked up as a receiver, as a complete back in training camp. All signs point to this guy being used right away. And in general, if I'm going to take a quote-unquote upside back in this range, after Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne are gone a little bit earlier, this guy's available, 87th overall pick, 8th, 9th round area in your home leagues. By all accounts, again, this is the upside RB2 I'm looking at. I take a McCaffrey, I take a Cook, I take a KAMARA. I know that's a common theme I've been saying all video. This is the type of guy I would look for to supplement those RB2 weeks to make up for the quote-unquote lack of depth at the running back position.
Right. I think he's the poster child for the RB2 of the hero RB strategy. I think it's the perfect situation you want to get yourself in. He's going to give you probably borderline RB2 production right from the beginning of the season, whether Raheem Mostert's on the field or not. We know Raheem Mostert, it sounds like he's already dealing with injury, which doesn't shock me one bit. Also, Deebo Samuel already dealing with injury. So that maybe opens up some carries because Deebo Samuel's used in that way too. So yeah, this is a guy that was targeted as well when he was on the field with the first team in the preseason offense. So that's encouraging to see. I know Trey Sermon can do that, but I didn't expect it to be a huge part of his game at the next level. And this is a guy, for those of you that don't follow the NFL draft, I know we're getting some more casual fantasy players back to the fantasy space. This was a guy that was taken in the third round. They traded up to go get him. So Kyle Shanahan, yeah, he's traded up and he's drafted running backs in the past, but that draft capital alone definitely indicates that he should be involved to some degree. And what we've heard out of camp, like Danny said, is this guy's already the starting running back of the team. What we saw in the preseason game, this guy's already the starting running back of the team. So we might even be a little too low on Trey Sermon by the time the season starts. We might have to move him up.
Yeah, for sure. He's currently my RB26, but I can honestly see a scenario entering the season where I have him in that top 24. I have him on that fringe top 20 area. And in general, I'm looking at it right now. If he has that role that we project, what is the allure of taking a Josh Jacobs over him? Genuinely speaking, if he ends up getting that role, if we see throughout the preseason that he is locked into, let's say a 55% opportunity share, this is the type of guy I'm taking over a floor player running back any day of the week.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely don't disagree there. And we'll get into two more running backs here real fast, rapid fire. Kareem Hunt and Myles Gaskin. Both of these guys are going borderline top 25 running backs, 67th overall on Underdog for Kareem Hunt, 74th overall on Underdog for Myles Gaskin, 61 overall on multi-site. Like we said, there's usually a big discrepancy with these running backs going earlier on multi-site, and 63rd overall multi-site for Myles Gaskin. So on Kareem Hunt, real quick, I'm out in season long. I don't want this guy in my season long roster. The best case scenario happened last year. Nick Chubb missed 4 or 6 games, whatever he missed. And Kareem Hunt was still not that great. And he played some tough defenses during that stretch, but I don't think this is a guy that we can rely on week in, week out as long as Nick Chubb is on the field. And even when Nick Chubb is off the field, this guy only proved to be like an RB2 at best. Like, this is not a guy that is going to be a guy that is winning people leagues by any means. So he'll have his games here and there. I think he's a good pick in best ball for that reason, but I have a feeling you're not going to know when to start this guy. And more often than not, people are going to throw him into their lineup each and every week and be disappointed more often than not, because what's the touchdown ceiling for a guy like Kareem Hunt? Because he's not the goal line back of his team.
He hit it last year.
Right.
He hit it last year. He had what, 11?
Yeah, and he's going to, like, and again, Chubb missed games last year, so that definitely helped him. So this is a guy that's going to need 6-7 receiving touchdowns in order to hit any kind of weekly ceiling for you, because he's simply going to get 8 to 15 touches a week, and you got to hope for a touchdown out of this guy. So at this point in the draft where he's going, again, 61 overall on multi-site ADP, give me all the wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks in that range over a guy like Kareem Hunt.
Absolutely, and we know Kareem Hunt, the talent, is worth that pick. However, he had 11 total touchdowns last year, and people are going to say, oh, he finished as the RB10. What do you mean? That's a good finish. He was closer to the RB29 in PPR points per game. This guy was, or a half PPR points per game. This guy was averaging 12 and a half PPR points per game. What league is that winning you? Genuinely. What is that winning you? He is a fodder pick. If you're taking him over the Jerry Judys, the Jamar Chases, the T. Higgins, the Brandon AIYUKs, all these upside wide receivers in the 5th, 6th round area, you are playing fantasy wrong, because this guy is the definition of a, I don't want to say fodder running back, but dead zone running back. Genuinely, what does he offer you apart from quote unquote more standalone value, if you will, over a guy like Latavius Murray, who you can get in the 12th round? Genuinely. Like, he's probably
I would much rather take some of these other running backs that have standalone value, like at a 6th round discount. Like, I can get Gus Edwards in the 11th round compared to where I can get Kareem Hunt. And at least with Gus Edwards, we don't really know what his role is going to be. I'm pretty sure we know by now what Kareem Hunt's role is going to be, and it's not valuable enough, in my opinion, unless they're playing the Bengals 16 games a year, for them to they ran for like 250 yards that game, and everybody kind of remembers that. It's like, this is what Kareem Hunt can be when Nick Chubb's on the field, but they decimated that team. That's not going to happen every single week. They play the Steelers twice a year. They play the Ravens twice a year. It's going to be tough for him to hit that kind of ceiling. So with Myles Gaskin, I already mentioned his ADP. The reason I'm not drafting this guy either is because the only thing that Gaskin had in his favor was volume. Last year, he had a very high opportunity share, 67.5% last year. He was the RB12 in points per game, so he definitely performed from a fantasy perspective. But I think this was kind of the writing on the wall situation. What Myles Gaskin was last year was a good receiving back, but very inefficient on the ground. And they rectified that, right? They went out and signed Malcolm Brown. They drafted Jared Dokes. And I think what we saw in preseason game 1 is exactly what we're going to see in the regular season. Malcolm Brown played 16 snaps to Myles Gaskin's 7 with the first team. And I think what we're going to get is Malcolm Brown on 1st and 2nd down, with Myles Gaskin mixing in, of course, and Myles Gaskin is the 3rd down back. So is Myles Gaskin going to be the guy that he was last year? No, I think he's going to be a lot closer to what Nyheim Hines is than he is to what he was last year.
Yeah, fully agree. And I'm fully out on Myles Gaskin unless he falls to the 8th round area, 9th round area. Maybe I consider him there in more PPR formats, but this guy's going to go 5th, 6th round in your home leagues because he's a running back and quote unquote, he has that projectable volume based off what he did last year. So fully agree. Another guy in this kind of dead zone area, Chase Edmonds, RB28, 77 overall on Underdog, RB26, 67 overall on multi-site. I'm more aligned with the Underdog ADP. However, again, I'm probably still not going to take him this range. Talking about half PPR, guys like Michael Gallup, guys like Antonio Brown, etc. I would just prefer over a Chase Edmonds archetype, but I guess if you punt the running back position, you're in a full PPR scoring format, and he's available to you 8th round, that's probably where I'd get him. But we can see that he was utilized on 70% of the first team snaps yesterday against the Kansas City Chiefs. However, I do think that James Conner might have the more valuable role on this team, getting those goal line opportunities. And let's not forget that, as I've mentioned multiple times, the quarterbacks rankings videos, Kyler Murray is one of the most utilized quarterbacks in the red zone area in terms of rushing. So what is the ceiling between the 20s running back that probably catches 3-4 balls a game? Sure.
Yeah, and like I said, with those 4 major things, bulk of the carries, probably not going to get him, right? He's going to split with James Conner and Kyler Murray. Pass catching work, yeah, he'll get that, but how much is Kyler Murray really going to throw to his running backs as a mobile quarterback? Goal line work, this guy legitimately had, 1 goal line carry last year with Kenyon Drake being ineffective as he was. I think James Conner is going to absorb that Kenyon Drake role. And like you said, Kyler Murray is going to be the guy that is actually the effective runner in the red zone. And then also breakaway plays. Yeah, he might have a couple breakaway plays this year, but that's really the ceiling you're getting from Chase Edmonds on a weekly basis. He has to have a breakaway play for him to hit a weekly ceiling. So again, a guy in the 8th, 9th round, if you go hero RB, you want to get him as your RB2. Not the worst pick in the world, but I think this is a guy that's going to go closer to that 5th, 6th round range. And at that point, all the way out, give me all the wide receivers in that range.
Like, what's a weekly ceiling we can see with Chase Edmonds? Like 14 combined touches, like 93 yards from scrimmage, and maybe if he's lucky, a touchdown. Like,
yeah, and this is a guy that'll probably only score 5, 6, 7 touchdowns the whole season too. Like, because he's going to need receiving touchdowns. He's going to need big plays to get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. So, anyways, anything else you want to wrap up, or should we take out this video?
Yeah, we can wrap this video up. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want access to all of our other rankings, our running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, whatever, dynasty, redraft, super flex, half PPR, full PPR, you guys can get that in our draft guide. And the way you can get that is by going to underdogfantasy.com, depositing $10. You will get a $25 match back on whatever you deposit. So you deposit 10, you'll have $35 on the site to play with. You can enter puppy contest, best ball mania, whatever you want to enter on there. And you'll also get both of our draft guides for free as a thank you, basically, for depositing on Underdog using our promo card. And our Pristine Auction contest ends very soon. So make sure, if you haven't already signed up for Pristine Auction, go to pristineauction.com and use promo code FSE when you sign up. All you have to do is sign up to be entered into the jersey giveaway. Signed Brandon AIYUK, signed DeAndre Swift, and signed Alvin Kamara jersey. That will be announced next week at some point. So make sure you get that done. It's totally free to do so. I don't know why you wouldn't already do it unless you already have a Pristine Auction account, but you'll also get $10 on the site to bid on hundreds of daily auctions and all that kind of stuff. Devin White signed football behind me. Calvin Ridley signed jersey behind me. All 100% authentic. So peace out, guys, and enjoy your Saturday.